I watched a YouTube video recently about a woman who is 102 years old. She's a medical doctor named Gladys McGarry. The video talked about her lifestyle and her diet, and I was appalled to hear that in the mornings, according to the narrator, she starts her day savoring a nourishing breakfast of fiber-rich raisin bran accompanied by refreshing prune juice. I just about gagged listening to that. A nourishing breakfast of fiber-rich raisin bran accompanied by refreshing prune juice. If I ate a breakfast like that, my blood sugar would be off the charts. Yet here she is at 102, mobile, sharp, and doing well. Now, she has battled a couple of types of cancer, so she's had some health issues, but anyone living to be 102 and still fully functional has beaten the odds, no doubt about that. The narrator went on to make an editorial comment about the prune juice, saying prunes serve as an excellent source of energy due to their high sugar content. Again, this was sickening to me. You might just as well say the same thing about donuts and moon pies, but their high sugar content hardly makes them worth eating. There is another video about the actor Dick Van Dyke and his diet and routine, which has served him well. He is now 97 years old. Van Dyke normally starts his morning with a smoothie made from beets, carrots, apples, and chia seeds. This would not be easy on the blood sugar. But at his age, I have to say he's doing pretty well. And get this, Dick Van Dyke also includes raisin bran as a part of his breakfast, and he adds extra raisins for more sweetness, and then tops it off with wheat bran. Again, that would send most diabetics' blood sugar well beyond 200 milligrams per deciliter. But at the age of 97, well, Dick Van Dyke seems to be getting by with it, and even thriving. There are numerous others who manage to live to be old and have few health problems and eat in a way that I would never eat today. My own dad lived to be 87 and ate the same standard American diet that my mom ate, only in smaller portions. He was healthy all but the last year of his life, while Mom became diabetic fairly early on. Even while in his 80s, Dad's doctor told him he had the blood pressure of a teenager, and he never had diabetes or even prediabetes as far as we know. My mom, on the other hand, was taking 5 blood pressure medications along with diabetes meds and daily pills to help her with her osteoporosis. One of the things I've noticed about people like Gladys McGarry, Dick Van Dyke, my dad, and numerous others who seem to beat the odds and stay healthy even while eating a relatively high-carb diet is that they're nearly all slim. Where can you find an obese person in their 90s who is healthy, non-diabetic, and has normal blood pressure? The simple fact is, slim people can usually get away with eating a higher carb diet or even an unhealthier diet than overweight people can. In the Bible, there's a verse which says that love covers a multitude of sins. And in this matter of diet, well, I think you could paraphrase that and say that being thin covers a multitude of dietary transgressions and not such great choices. There is no getting around it. When you're overweight, you are much more likely to develop diabetes than you would be if you had maintained the slimness of your youth. This is so demonstrably true that the first thing many doctors will tell a newly diagnosed diabetic is, you need to lose about 20 pounds, or 40 pounds, or 80 pounds. And there's truth in this. For many type 2 diabetics, they could go from diabetic to non-diabetic if the only thing they did was lose enough weight until they could get to a reasonable size and weight. Jerry Mathers, who once played Beaver on the TV show Leave It to Beaver, was told by his doctor that his diabetes was so severe he would never live to see his grandchildren if he didn't lose weight and get his diabetes under control. Jerry struggled for a while and finally joined a weight loss group which helped him to drop the pounds he needed to lose. And sure enough, he became non-diabetic. When he shares his story, he says very little about diet, and he attributes his success to simply losing the necessary weight. But there is another issue that many people, including many doctors, never consider. Excess weight can lead to diabetes, sure enough. But the reverse is also true. Type 2 diabetes can lead to becoming more and more overweight. Most type 2 diabetics have a pancreas that is working overtime. It's pumping its little guts out, releasing more and more insulin in a vain attempt to keep up with the ever-increasing blood sugar. The problem is not a faulty pancreas in many cases. In fact, for many type 2 diabetics, their pancreas deserves an award for meritorious conduct, working like crazy to make up for all those donuts and cakes and pies and potatoes and rice and pasta and Little Debbie snack cakes, pastries, fruit pies, soda, fruit juice, Monster energy drinks, and other junk that they are constantly ingesting. These foods spike blood sugar, and for an insulin-resistant person with a functional pancreas, there is a tremendous release of insulin. And floods of insulin in your body will produce a huge amount of fat storage. Insulin is the fat-storing hormone, and you will gain unseemly fat in all the wrong places. Not only will you get bigger overall, but your pancreas, liver, and other organs will become choked with fat, and your body will become more and more dysfunctional. A vicious cycle is created. The fatter you get, the more diabetic you become, and the more diabetic you become, the fatter you will get. You will end up blowing up like a beach ball. What's more, eating a high-carb, high-junk diet will typically cause you to become constantly hungry, and you'll eat more and more. You'll be on a crash course with diabetes, with its attendant organ failures, numbness in the feet, amputations, blurry vision, and premature death. When I see a middle-aged, overweight man or woman, my thought is often, that person is probably diabetic. But note the word probably. It's not always true that overweight people are diabetic, nor is it always true that slim people are never diabetic. These things are usually true, but not always, and that's what makes diabetes kind of confusing and even frustrating. Sometimes I get emails from diabetics who say, I can't afford to lose any weight. I'm skinny already. How can I do intermittent fasting? And the truth is, these people probably do need to be eating 3 full meals a day, but just not high-carb meals. If it was me and I was really skinny, I would eat large portions of low-carb foods, and I would eat 3 meals a day, filling myself with lots of nuts, cheese, butter, and cream. Keep those calories coming, but limit those carbs. But that's not the problem for most type 2 diabetics. Most type 2s are overweight, and there is some good news in this. If you are overweight, there's an excellent chance that your pancreas is working just fine. It has not failed you yet, and the flood of insulin that it's constantly releasing is partly responsible for your weight. What this means is that if you can just change your diet to break the cycle of hyperinsulinemia and eat more fats and proteins and less carbs, it's more than likely that you can bring down your glucose levels in a hurry and lose much of your insulin resistance. What's more, for most people, there's no need to give too much consideration to weight loss. By following the guidelines of my Beat Diabetes Challenge, which involves 2 meals per day without snacks in between, low-carb eating perhaps less than 50 grams of carbs per day, hopefully less, and keeping your meals within a strict 6-hour window, that weight is going to start dropping off without you having to think very much about it. No gritting your teeth and making vows, no New Year's resolutions, no keeping track of points, no attending group meetings, no ordering special foods from some weight loss group. Just eat those 2 low-carb meals each day within a 6-hour window between 12:30 p.m. and 6:30 p.m., or you could create an eating window between 7 a.m. and 1 p.m. skipping your evening meal and perhaps having a cup of bulletproof coffee in lieu of that meal. Give up snacking and sometimes have some carnivore meals and even carnivore days with essentially no carbs at all, especially in the evening if you eat an evening meal. If you're switching from a standard diet to that kind of eating, it will be almost impossible for you not to lose weight, and you won't even have to try. It will likewise be almost impossible for you not to see a significant reduction of your A1C. It's just a law of physics. Reduce the carbs, stop all that snacking, employ time-restricted eating, and glucose levels will sheepishly retreat. Some people require a longer time than others, but it almost has to happen sooner or later. If you have a liver and a pancreas jam-packed with fat, well, yeah, it might take a bit longer, but even that condition cannot last forever when you employ the right tools. Now, if you can go 9 months eating this way and no cheating and you still see almost no improvement, well, if I were you, I'd want to have my insulin checked to see if my pancreas is doing its part. It may be that you have the condition known as LADA, which is essentially where you're degenerating from type 2 diabetes to a condition very much like type 1 diabetes. And if that is the case, definitely have your doctor investigate this. You may need to inject insulin, and by the way, that's not the end of the world. Now, here's some great news for overweight type 2 diabetics. Your situation is probably the easiest form of diabetes to beat, much easier than for a slim person who's severely diabetic. Changing to a very low-carb diet with intermittent fasting will whip that sucker nearly every time. A skinny type 2 diabetic has some special things going on in his or her body, and often they'll have more trouble beating diabetes than an overweight type 2. And here's some more good news. There is evidence that when you switch to a low-carb diet, you can see significant progress even while you're still very much overweight. Many diabetics find that once they change their lifestyle, their blood sugars respond very quickly. It would appear that, at least in some cases, it's not so much all that excess weight that's making them diabetic. It's the large amount of carbs and sugar that they're constantly eating and drinking that's doing this. And once you cut down on those carbs and sugars, your blood sugar is going to plummet even if you're still 100 pounds overweight. It doesn't always work this way, but often it does. If you've watched many of my videos, you're going to know that I don't frequently harp on weight loss. I focus on the diet that beats diabetes rather than telling people to determine to lose their weight. There are a couple of reasons for that. First, by slashing the carbohydrates in your diet, you will have correspondingly less insulin in your blood, and you will stop accumulating fat and will start to shred fat. Secondly, when you eat more fat in your diet, you will stop being ravenously hungry. And the simple fact is that people who are not hungry do not overeat. Let me say that again. The people who are not constantly hungry do not constantly overeat. Hungry people are the ones that overeat, and hungry is precisely what you will be when you constantly stuff yourself with potato chips and pastries and pasta and rice and sugary desserts. You might be totally stuffed to the gills after eating, but within 3 hours or so, your blood sugar is going to take a nosedive and you'll start looking for something else to eat. Fat and protein, on the other hand, satisfy us, and we can forget about food and snacks until it's time to eat another meal. There is, however, one scenario in which low-carb folks may need to concern themselves with weight. At some point in our low-carb journey, our weight will level off. You will not lose weight perpetually. If you did, you'd shrink down to nothing like that wicked witch in the Wizard of Oz movie who was liquidated and essentially dissolved into nothingness. Eating low carb, you will eventually reach a set point in your weight, and if you're still overweight at that point, it may take a little more effort on your part. It may even take, gasp, self-control. I've been at this place, this set point, for a lot of years now. Years ago, when I first got involved in low carb, I was down to around 150 pounds. I looked terribly skinny. But then I started floating back the other direction, and now I have to work at it to keep under 170. In fact, after Thanksgiving, I'm over that 170, and I have put myself on a strict diet. And I know that even 5 pounds can make a difference in my blood pressure and in my blood sugar and in my morning fasting glucose test. In his book called Diabetes Epidemic and You, Dr. Joseph Kraft tells how that for over 25 years he has taken tests which indicate hyperinsulinemia and insulin resistance. And sometimes his tests would show that he was insulin resistant and sometimes not. And he writes this about the difference. He says the variations were directly related to a weight fluctuation of 5 to 10 pounds. That, my friends, is how important it is for us to get to the right weight and stay there. Your life and your health depend upon it. If you've recently been diagnosed with diabetes and you've just discovered this channel, let me recommend that you go to our Uploads page, which will give you access to every diabetic video we've posted since we began. As you work your way through all our videos, I believe you'll find the help you need. A link to our Uploads page is in the description.